to call up Miss Nana and Miss Vita. As said before, I will call you all only by names. Yeah. Nana, are you going to be the first one? Do you want to be there? You want to come up? What do you want to do? Come up? Sure. The stage is yours. So now you have like 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm a scientist. I can't stretch it for that long.
You're up for a discussion because we have quite a lot of time.
Yes, so as you see in my title, yes, I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist, so I had to prepare. I don't speak well off the cuff. It was proven in many events before, so I prepared. I will read something and then we can discuss, and I'm open for questions. So if we put one slide back, maybe.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
The title is quite a mouthful, so I had to really think about what I'm going to speak. So let's begin. In 1995, the Council of Europe ran the first European youth campaign against racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and intolerance. It ran under the name All Different, All Equal, or in Slovenian, Vsi drugačni, vsi enakopravni. I applaud whoever translated this to Slovenian for not saying vsi enaki, because it is important to note the difference between enaki and enakopravni. I don't think we can be enaki, we can only be enakopravni, right? So I remember this campaign clearly. I was in elementary school at the time, aged 11, and really too young to fully grasp the prevalence of these issues and the importance in addressing them. Now in 2020, 25 years later, Europe and the world are still facing these and many similar issues. Exclusion or bias based on persons' gender, skin color, cultural or religious beliefs, physical and mental abilities, or sexual orientation. And since this is the Women Economic Forum, I will focus in the remainder of this speech on gender bias. Why? Because I'm most familiar with this topic, being a woman, daughter, sister, wife, mother of 2 girls, and a woman with scientific and business experience. Now a bit of a backstory. I always preferred playing with Legos than Barbies, reading encyclopedias rather than fairy tales, exploring the outdoors rather than playing video games. I set up my own lab at the age of 8 in the family farm outbuilding, collecting bugs, measuring and drawing them. I was interested in many subjects in school and loved learning. As I first held a periodic table in my hands, I knew I wanted to be a scientist and perform experiments. So I went on to study biochemistry, obtained a PhD in chemistry, and did postdoctoral research abroad in the UK in the field of development of new antibiotics. I published in several peer-reviewed journals, including Nature, and contributed to a patent. And while I am no longer a practicing scientist, and we'll come back to that at the end of my talk, I still identify as one and try to encourage younger generations into the STEM field, so science, technology, engineering, maths. Looking back, I was really fortunate to have become a scientist at one point because of 2 things in my life. Firstly, to have parents with a growth mindset who instilled in me that I can become whatever I decide to be, and that if I work hard enough, anything is possible. And secondly, to have had this strong inclination for a calling from an early age. I see and meet a lot of people who are still quite confused around the age of 18 when they have to choose their field of study or which university to attend. Now, we can't really influence which family we're born into, but in order to increase gender diversity in the STEM field and in business, we have to work together as a society to make this happen. Here are a few examples I put together of how I am trying to contribute to this cause that will hopefully encourage and inspire others. I was one time ago a regular contributor and wrote over a dozen articles for the Slovenian popular science magazine Gea. You know, I was subscribed to this magazine as a child. So I was thrilled to be able to present interesting topics like the nature and development of new medicines, genetics, food supplements, and even explain the science behind Nobel Prizes in medicine to a lay audience. I'm also a mentor for students aged 15 to 25 in the first mentor scheme set up by the Young Leaders Club of the American Chamber of Commerce in Slovenia. My current mentee is a successful young woman, a law student, who among other extracurricular activities spent some time in India, volunteering in girls' orphanages. She wrote an incredible essay on the importance of access to education for young girls, which we in the developed world almost take for granted these days. Also, with my help, that essay will see the day of light by being published, perhaps even in Gaia, as I open the doors for her like my unofficial and official mentors, female and male, opened the doors for me. And I think this is the power of a good mentor and a strong network. We need to teach women that asking for help or advice is not a sign of weakness. Furthermore, I readily accept all invitations for talks like this one to promote STEM and women in business and introduce scientific or business career to elementary and high school students. However, I believe we should start engaging the youth at an even earlier age, starting in kindergarten. Another story, my eldest daughter is almost 4 years old, and 15 out of 19 children in her kindergarten group are girls. That's almost 80% if you calculate. When her teachers mentioned to me that child-led activities almost always include arts and crafts, cooking, and playing with dolls, I immediately offered to come in and do a day of science experiments with regular household items, and the kids were ecstatic. The teacher marveled at what you can do with vinegar, baking soda, and some food coloring, and several times exclaimed, "Look, children, it's like magic." And I, of course, hurried to correct her, "It's science, not magic." And the consequence of that, at least in my household, is that my daughter now routinely walks around the house with yogurt cups and different other cups, which she can find, filled with the most unusual concoctions. And although she makes a mess, I'm so proud of her for experimenting and trying. The next point I'd like to outline is that I believe women need to apply for, and we all need to support and promote gender diversity initiatives. I myself was a recipient of such a fellowship for my postdoctoral studies, and while my male colleagues at the time called it sexist towards men, the scholarship was called UNESCO L'Oréal for Women in Science International Fellowship, and only women could apply. Only after a deep study of gender inequality, I could understand why these initiatives and corporate responsibility schemes are really necessary. In order to close the gender gap in the workplace, which is currently projected by the World Economic Forum to last for at least another 100 years, these initiatives are simply necessary evil in order to speed the process up. You might have heard the news that just this week the investment bank Goldman Sachs announced it will no longer take the company public unless said company has at least one diverse board member. And I say diverse is because experts on the topic quickly jumped to correct the phrasing in that there can't be diverse members. Is a woman diverse because she is not the current standard, a man? There can only be diverse boards. And while I agree with the critics, we mustn't forget that every step in the right direction is a good step, and keep pushing forward. Now, gender diversity, of course, goes both ways. In my current position as a business development manager in a pharma company, I actively contributed to hiring more men into our company, as it was too female-dominated. Namely, research shows that gender-diverse teams perform better, and while more women should do STEM and penetrate top management positions, in my opinion, more men should be present in professions like teaching, especially at kindergarten and elementary school level, and caring, for example, nursing. Additionally, I'm a vocal supporter of flexible working hours whenever possible and work-from-home days, as the quality of work-life balance is, from my experience, a key factor in deciding to start or expand your family while still successfully navigating your career. To sum this part up, my hope is to see the gender gap close before the end of my lifetime, and I strongly believe we need to focus on education, mentoring, networking, and leading by example to inspire more women to pursue careers in STEM and business. And now the outro. Coming back to why I'm no longer a practicing scientist, let me finish with a short story. When returning to Slovenia, which was a condition of my fellowship from the UK, I had 2 job interviews set up. One was a teaching and a research position at my home university, and the other was a job in the pharma industry. And despite great track and publication record and an inspired speech on what my research field would be and a potential to bring in funding from the industry, the all-male, 60 plus years of age interview board of professors' last interview question to me was, how are you going to do this job being a woman? Now, this is not the first time I got openly sexist comments in my career, and my mind was literally on fire. But I managed to respond gracefully, and above all in a scientific and fact-based manner. In the end, I did not get offered that job, and as a side note, the job advert was anyway just written, but it was known upfront who they're going to hire. In my eyes, I only managed to push against and not break the glass ceiling of becoming a professor in academia. I did, however, seize the other opportunity by the horns and made my mark by working in the pharma industry. I pivoted into business by taking a year off to complete an MBA. And that new knowledge, coupled with my background in life sciences and passion for efficiency and process optimization, is now leading me towards a fulfilling career in operational management, where I stand once again pushing against that glass ceiling, and this time I will go all the way. So, thank you. I was probably pretty quick because I timed it to 12 minutes. Can you see that? 12 minutes.
Oh, wow. Any questions?
Yes.
I mean, can we do some scientific stuff, like something?
Yeah, you just have water.
What do you need? What do you need? I'll bring everything.
Oil, water, and some calcium tablets. You probably can't get
We'll
that.
try to get him till the end. I want to do some scientific
Yes.
things. So thank you very much, Rita, for sharing.
Yes.
I thought when I saw the speech, I said, "Oh my God, what is she going to say?" But it was really, really good.
It took me a long time to prepare this.
It was really good, and I can imagine your daughters grabbing cups around. And I was thinking about your
daughters as well, yeah.
So thank you, and Nana.
Maybe Nana, and then we can open the discussion.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's
That would be great.
the way to go forward. Yeah?
Just if you can move the slides a little bit to the next
Tam
one.
naprej, ja.
Yeah, the scientist in you. Yes, so hi, my name is Nana. Whenever I look at my name written like this, obviously that's my academic title, and I'm very proud of it, but I'm Nana. Dr. Sumrada is my father. So, and it's still very funny how I do not necessarily identify with being a scientist, but being just a human. And that's something I will talk about to you today. But before I do that, I would like to discuss a little bit with my colleagues here. You met Vita, the incredible Vita that I met through AmCham. We're all AmCham top potentials. That's something that Aisha, the CEO, talked about. So it's investing, and I see faces of AmCham talents also in the audience. That's a program that AmCham Slovenia started on their own, basically. And as you can see, there are three of us were girls. I was the second generation, and I was the woman to be picked. And one of the committee members said, it should be a female that wins. That's why I supported you. And I was like, a female is such a... I felt that identifying as a female was so aggressive. Well, actually, I'm a human being. Above all, I'm that. Together with all the males and females and bisexuals and LGBTs and everything we have today, I'm a human being. That's the first thing. So when I talk about this topic, and I go to the lovely Diana, who's a mother of two, Vita's a mother of two, I'm a mother of two, and we all have girls. Altogether we have 6 girls. And that's amazing. Matej, I don't know, I don't think he has kids. So Matej is he's the most recent AmCham top potentials, and he has a kind of a difficult role because there a lot of women are preceding this, and we are as not just I wouldn't say equal, but we combine. We are so we discuss. I think we're very different, and what distinguishes us are personal traits, not necessarily our gender. Diana, I'm sorry that she's away. She would absolutely inspire you with her talks. She has this amazing project that she does with kindergartens and education. So how to be a teacher and how to empower teachers to be proud of their jobs. So I just wanted to take a few minutes here to tell you about my colleagues who are missing. So back to our topic. No, I didn't make the topic. Vita thought that I suggested the topic. I didn't. But I would like to share very, very personal thoughts on this topic. So myself, I'm a lawyer. I was lucky and privileged enough to study in one of the best schools of the world. It's in the US, it's Harvard Law School. And then that was my master's degree. And let me go back, I wanted to study math. And actually I did for a few months. And then I realized that math is not as creative as I wanted it to be. It was axiom, it was law 1, law 2, law 3, you never break that. And I said, well, if this is math, I want it to be more creative. And I said, but then I can study law as well. And I see them both very, very similar. They're both systems of human experience. This is it. And in my spare time, some ladies can tell you I do immersive theater where I invite my friends who are only ladies and we enjoy that too. And that's also human experience. It's all the same creation. I don't see it as a different thing because usually when people meet me in my job as a serious lawyer and I have a PhD in tax law, which doesn't really help. So yes, indeed, it's in Belgian Katholieke Universiteit Leuven. So, and it sounds like god-awful, but it's actually fun because this is the way you see the law, the math, the physics, is how humans see the world. And unluckily, law tells you what humans are afraid of, how we're afraid of others, how we limit ourselves from others. And it's not a good start, but if you use that knowledge, you know how humans work. So I use that knowledge to the good, not necessarily to the bad. And I see one of my ex-colleagues there. I don't know how she felt when she was working with me, but maybe she can confirm some of it. Or maybe it's just I'm just, telling a total bollocks here. Okay, so in terms of this topic, I think it's fourfold. It's how you see yourself, how you see yourself in the world, how you see others in good times, and finally others in bad times. So how you see yourself has a lot to do with how you're raised. Vita told you that as well. I had scientist parents too, and have a mother who is like the Mother Earth impersonalized. There's nothing she cannot do, and she's always said, you can do whatever you want to do. So in our household, there was no difference between male and female, mother and father, grandmothers, grandfathers. We were all the same. We had our tasks. We were one same family. Yeah, I mean, there was never an excuse that my mother had a period and couldn't do something. There was never an excuse that my father was incapable of managing any type of home equipment machine. He still is, by the way. But he has very interesting pieces of advice. So let's put it like that. That's his contribution. And he would pour champagne when you cook, which is a nice thing for a man to do. So basically... Yeah, not now. I think he's babysitting my kids. So yeah. But yeah, he's that type of grandfather. And so funnily, as a grandfather, he's such a nice man. As a father, he's pretty strict with me. But so how you see? Yeah, it's the way it goes. It seems. But the way you see yourself is so values, your moral background, your religious background sometimes. But let me tell you how I see myself. The more I use, and that's why I'm just Nana. The more I use my titles, the more I tell you what I did and what titles I have, the more I do that to distinguish myself from you. The more I describe myself as a woman who's Slovene, who speaks that many languages, who's blonde, and how my achievements are, the more I'm telling you something that you may not care about. Because I may be a total moron and all of my titles will not help. And especially they will not help you if I'm your boss, correct? Because you'll only care about whether I see you as a person and whether I care about your well-being or I'm a total a-hole, right? Despite of my titles and all the wonderful things that describe me. So the way to see yourself, you're the same as everybody else. This is how I see myself. I'm privileged, yes. I look different than you sitting in the room. I'm a woman, as you're distinguished to you, sir. I'm not a man like you, but this is the starting of the conversation. So the way you see yourself defines how you see others. And I see myself as completely equal to everybody else. And one thing that one team member, I run now a team of 15 lawyers directly, way more indirectly, and one of my male colleagues said that I'm the greatest boss in the world. And I said, why? Because you like blonde women? The answer was partially true. But the second one is because you seem to be so not preoccupied about yourself. Right. I mean, he is a bit of a charmer, but let's take it like that. That's a good compliment, I think. So, and basically, so the more you distinguish yourself, the more you need to compete, the more you need to struggle, the more the world is a very harsh place, that it's cold and terrible, and that you need to really struggle to survive. But one thing, and it's not a hypothesis, it's an invitation. It's the second one, how you see the world and how you see yourself in it. If you see yourself as the same as everybody else, but you have your own capacities, your own qualities, your own characteristics, your own calling, ladies and gentlemen, you do. And I discovered mine, you know where? In the harshest competition in the world, in the US class. Everybody was great. Everybody was excellent and probably best, even better than I ever will be in law. And you know what? I discovered what my good points are. I discovered where my strong baseline is. And I realized I put, the grand picture of the human into the law. And I see people the way they are, and this is how I introduce law to other areas. Because after all, I'm a tax lawyer, once again, that very bad point about me. So, and if you see yourself as a unique person and you only care about you, nobody can compete with you because you are the best version of you. On the other hand, if you try to be someone else, if you try to fit in, if you try to really, by force, manipulate somebody else, you have a problem, yes, because then the world means you need to compete. You need to elbow somebody out. You need to do this. But my invitation is, see yourself as the creator of your own reality, of your own path. This is what I always used to. And I was lucky enough to have my parents who would support me. Even my husband, who some of you know, tells me, it's okay. Listen, you don't need to do the job you hate. You do the same for me. You'd support me if I stay without the job. Or let's say if you really don't like something, you don't need to do that. And we have the freedom not to do that. So yeah, I invite you and everyone I always meet, see yourself as the creator of your own path. That helps enormously, and if you do that, nobody can take that path away, and there's always an abundance of possibilities that you can do. So the second thing is how you see the world. Yeah, well, the world would tend to reflect how you see yourself and the others. And like I said, the world can be competition, but it can also be collaboration. And you don't need to be credited and thanked for every single thing you do. Because you have to ask yourself why you do things. And if you do them for credit, if you do them for title, yeah, I guess that what would make you happy is the credit or title. But at the end, the world and your world is just one thing that I think Dr. Harbeen Arora said in the beginning, is how happy you are. Because if you're not happy, nothing helps much. Nothing really helps much. It's really just competition and slightly, that bag you buy or that title you gain or that credit you gain or anything else. So basically it's you on your path and you're accountable for you. Everything you're sincere by, everything you love, everything you hate, everything you fake, everything you manipulate, that's you. You don't do that to others, you do that to yourself. So the illusion of the outside world is just an illusion. So basically, this is the world for me. It's very philosophical. I love the title because I can talk about these sort of things. So that's the world. Basically, it's you and the reflection of you and your path, and the more forward and bold you go, the greater you can come, and basically just collaborate with others, and you will feel it like a wonderful sail and not an obstacle run for 200 meters, 400 meters. Okay, then how you see others. One thing that I said, and I think, sadly, I don't know, obviously it's stuck. I think also Dr. Harbeen Arora said, she quoted me saying, we should do what is easy. Yeah, we should do what is easy for us. If you have a life that gives you struggle, if you have a job that you hate, if you live in a relationship you basically don't like, that's not easy for you. It's easy for me to do tax law, incredible enough. It's easy for me. I like it. My job leading, a tax department of a large company, it comes easy. I like it. I love it. And it's easy. And even bigger obstacles than obstacles, there are challenges. But if you do things that are too difficult, or if you can interact with the world and you don't like interaction with people because you're generally a scientist or just a code breaker, do that. Do whatever you can do to the greatest, and that is the greatest service to yourself and everybody around you. So that's one thing. So first, and then I talk a lot. I have a lot of thoughts. And then, so basically do what is easy. And the other thing you do with interacting with others is, it really depends what you want. And there it really depends how motivated you are. So if you go short term, yeah, you have the wonderful KPIs. Yeah, they're there, but they're there short term. If you want to build any type of team or performing team mid or long term, you have to build relationships. And again, it's you. If you fake it, people will know. If you build relationships, people will know that you're interested. It's the same with your children. Sometimes people tell me, I don't know, my teenage daughter, she has these ideas, I don't know where they're coming from. And I'm like, well, that's a bit of a problem because it reflects your relationship with her. My daughter's 7, she's not yet hit teen, and I'm really terrified of that because she's showing some momentum. And one of the good things of parenthood and being a manager is you get to embrace the diversity of people, and it's incredible how different we are as people. Wow, that's amazing. And the greatest lessons are taught to you by people who are completely different than you are, have a completely different perspective on life, and that teaches you a lot. And so basically the relationships, yes. What I tell to my team is, because I work in a game development, mobile game development company, we have lots of men coming in pajamas to work. We have people who look like they're sleeping in the office. Then we have others who are executive. Then we have from cultures, we have the Chinese who are owners and dear colleagues. We have Indians, we have Americans, UK, I mean, basically lots of nations. I think we are 30 nations working together. And then you have the core business and you have the side business, and I'm the support business. And the way this all works is, it's pretty complex, but it works. To sum up, it's a relationship. You cannot collaborate with someone if you don't invest in the relationship. And for me, a relationship is caring about the well-being of people, but truly. But I'm interested in people. If you're not, it's okay. You lead by other things, and you don't need to quite fake that, but you do whatever you can in the way that's easy for you. And the last one, that's a bit tricky, is how you see others in a time of crisis. Because seeing everybody when everything is great, it's amazing, because everything works well. But in time of crisis, one thing is, again, the honesty and your path. People teach you all sorts of techniques of constructive feedback, or they teach you to team build. But the fact is, all those things that bother you, they basically bother you. The story of Snow White and the poisonous apple? The Snow White was actually fine, and the witch was not. So it's a nice allegory, but still, you do whatever feels good for you. So in times of crisis, you listen to what feels good for you. And if stomping on people's heads feels good to you, well, great, but then that's kind of your karma. Okay, so if I sum up, I'm not as constructive and written on paper as my dear learned colleague is. So one thing, how you see yourself is, try to think of yourself as the creator of your own life and your own path. Then the world seems like a really cool place, like a sandbox of creation that you can do. Do things that are easy to you, because this way you can advance and collaborate with others and include others when you want them to. Invest in relationships, and in time of crisis, just stay true to yourself. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for our dear ladies? If you ask Nana, it will take a bit longer. But she has very good points, always.
It's like everybody else. Come on.
You were all counting very good. Any questions? Please.
I haven't got a question, but I have some comments. I worked in the world of academia, so I was president of the European Children's University, and all my work was with primary school children, because if you don't start there, then you never actually follow. And I know that committee of men over 60 with suicide. And okay, to come back to your delightful, I don't know what to call it, dialogue. Earlier, at the end of last year, I'm British, but I live in Croatia, and the British had a general election. My voting papers appeared actually after Christmas, but We try to come close to home. And my son said, why have the British voted for Brexit and why have they alienated themselves? And it's exactly what you said. It's fear of change and fear of the other. And that, for me, is where the world that we live in. So if we're talking about the way we co-create, we have to find ways to remove the fear of change and the fear of the other. And it's exactly the same whether it's in academia or whether it's in law but I think my question I'm working towards, and I think you answered some of it quite well at the end, is we only have responsibility for ourselves. So what we have to do is to find ways of confronting our own fear. And I think I absolutely agree with Habib. It's like, my name is Allegra, which means always happy. So and it's not an easy thing to be always happy. I did the Portuguese Camino, and I did it with conscious sadness. And it was a really wonderful thing to do, to be consciously sad as well as to be consciously happy. Anyway, that's the side. So I think my question is how do we as women address in our own lives that fear of change and that fear of the other?
You have no paper. Yes, I don't have a problem with the first ones because I'm a natural change agent. And it's a difficult task because it's not, when you look at the population, most of us aren't. So I often find myself working in teams or in family or in the society as somebody who's pushing things forward.
Catalyst.
Yes, and one great example of how you could also call me is the snowplow, because it's the machine that kind of pushes, and it's not meant in a bad way. Like, I don't stomp on people to get things done, and to encourage people to embrace the change. I think it's the most important thing is to show them what the change situation will bring to them, because if you try to look at the change from their eyes, it's not necessarily the same view that you have, because you're in a different position. You can be a mom, child, or boss, employee, or co-worker, or whatever. If you don't put yourself in their position, it's much more difficult to take them along on the path of change. And I've seen this in many examples in business as well. I mean, trying to implement digitalization. I've been involved in a few projects like that. It's a totally side business for me, so I'm a chemist, but I love IT. I'm an early adopter of technology. I really believe it can improve our lives, and we can gain efficiency with it that can allow us to spend time elsewhere in more important things. I've seen that great fear of new technology coming to the workplace. People thought it's going to be more work, or vice versa. It could take away work from them, and they won't be necessary anymore. But if you sit with them and say, okay, what's your process of work now? Again, this is a very scientific approach, but that's how I approach things. Look at their process now, see whether help them see where they're currently wasting time and how this technology will help them save time and spend it elsewhere. You get people on board very quickly. And that's maybe answer to the first half of the question. Maybe for the second one, Nana, it's
fear of others.
Yes.
But what do you mean fear of others?
Yes.
What is the example?
Well, we had a presentation about dyslexia, right? And there is a genuine, I mean, I live in Croatia, right? There is a fear. It can be classified as racism towards people from a Roma background, of which there are 12 million across Europe. And I will say it to a Slovenian audience, it's not discussed in Croatia. I doubt it's discussed a lot in Slovenia. The other is the threat, right? From a UK perspective, it is somebody who doesn't look like me, someone who doesn't have my values, somebody who is going to do bad things to me. And that could be any, well, take Northern Ireland, it could be a Catholic and a Protestant. Now, you and I could go to Northern Ireland and we would see two people, we wouldn't have a clue. My dear friend who is from Belfast would tell me which was a Catholic and which was a Protestant, like that. So the other could look,
Like
we don't know what the other looks like. I mean, there are some communities where you can see, oh, they're definitely the other. And we can react differently. Someone in a wheelchair, oh, poor other, right? So we can patronize, we can pity, we can, somebody who doesn't look like me, maybe a different skin color or something else, we are going to, we cold shoulder them, we're not going to communicate with them. So the other is not who we are. And our reaction is very much, if I connect with you, you're not the other. I will tell you one short story. I worked a lot in America and I was in Birmingham, Alabama. And I was waiting to be picked up by a friend of mine. And there was a group of white women who looked just like me. And they were having this conversation. And I had never heard such an awful conversation in my life. Because I had never been part of white women talking about black people with that level of racism. And they assumed I was a white southern woman. And my friend came, who of course was African American, and dispelled that illusion. But for me, it was, I remember that, it was 20 years ago, because I got so much insight by that thing about perception. I was seen as somebody that I wasn't. And so I became part of them. And I became part of that club.
It's all about education, isn't it? In this case, it's all about education. If you're not aware that differences exist from an early age, primary
Exactly.
goals,
No, I have a dear friend, I'm going to her wedding next year. She was brought up in Tennessee, and her uncle and fathers would go and they'd put white robes on. She was taught black people were ignorant.
May I answer, perhaps, from audience? Maybe you noticed on the television now, when the movies and this series are rolling, every time, in every single series, there is one gay couple or one black person who is, so probably the community now is trying to change the perception and educate the young, because now it's normal, and I haven't noticed, to be honest, but my son did. So I think it's changing a lot.
Okay, I do conversation classes, and I had a conversation classes of 12, 13-year-olds last week in a village in Croatia, and this delightful young boy who was wonderful English told me very clearly that all Roma were thieves and all Romas were bad, right? And I'm sure he watches very good television, and I know we are changing, and I know I'm older, so some of my stories are past, but this was last week.
I mean, it's knowledge. That's why you go to those villages and talk. And educate. So with education, we can change that. For instance, you're talking about Croatia. Slovenia is quite similar in some kind of way. We are basically all white in Slovenia. I don't take myself as a racist at all, but 15 years ago, if I would see a black man on the street, I would turn around, not because he's black, but because he's like, okay, who is he?
Curious.
Not bad, but I was curious. Was he a basketball player, or usually it was something like that. But nowadays, things are changing. But yes, Croatia and Slovenia, for instance, where we have like smaller villages, their knowledge is still not there because they're coming from grandmas. My grandma told me, you should marry somebody from the village, it's easier. Now she says, take whoever you want. Just take somebody, or somebody takes you. Whatever.
You know what my grandma said to me? If you're not good enough, the Romans will take you away.
Can I maybe just, I think one thing is the state of education, the state of the world, and clearly that is changing, but it will take a lot. But there's something else that I was thinking about, and it's a personal idea of fear. And I mean, if you ever visit any psychotherapist, they would try to dissipate the fear by understanding it, by going back as to what is that causes fear. And it's usually either that, you know, somebody will take away something or give you something bad. And I have a very recent example that for me is a very painful example. It's an example of this awful disease that is spreading right now around the world. It's coronavirus. And part of my company is based in China. And so there are people in China, in Hangzhou, who are locked down because of the disease. And they have faces, they're not numbers. They are real people that we know and love and care for. And one of such people, for a while, was my brother, because his significant other is a Chinese woman from Shanghai. And they were locked inside and couldn't come back. And so, you know, and when they were on the plane coming back from Zagreb, the people joked, I mean, the stewardess and the staff, that now they have to clean and disinfect because this bitch came to the plane. And luckily she doesn't speak Croatian, but her son is half Slovene, so he understood, the 4-year-old boy. So, and in a recent case, when we had discussions this week, and it was very, very difficult because the two things I really, really hate, and that's discrimination and horrible drama. And they concoct together in this coronavirus panic that we have now. Undoubtedly there is a disease, but we're all humans as well. And so we had our colleagues from China flying in to the UK and just asking whether they can come to Slovenia. And you know, it's a difficult discussion saying the quarantine and what you can and cannot do and how you can move and cannot move, because it's so sensitive. It's the essence of discrimination now, isn't it? And then one person asked a terribly difficult question, obviously that I need to answer, is like, is there a criminal offense based on the fact that you do not respect the quarantine? And I said, well, I'm afraid there is, right? And there was all sorts of conversation, and it felt a little bit like it's us and them without us wanting to be us and them. And at the end of the day, we said, you know what? It's your human face on the other side of this spectacle, and its fear is, yes, obviously, fear is that we will get sick. That's the fear. And if you explore the fear, obviously there is one, and there are many, many fears in society, less complex than the one that I just mentioned, or the one that you mentioned. But always, I think one owes to themselves, at least, to explore this, and to implore it, and to decide what is true for you. Because a lot of those fears are inherited. And if it's your fear, it's fine, you can work on this. But if you allow the inherited fear manifest and fester your life, it's miserable. It's just miserable. So I think, and I don't believe that one person doesn't make a difference. We do that for ourselves. We explore our fears and we realize if this fear is mine, or maybe it's my grandmother's. Because maybe she actually was attacked by a Roma person or not. For me, it doesn't have to be my fear. But really what it helps is, I would say it helps it if you put a human face. If you know somebody who's Chinese right now, it's a very different problem for you. And for you, like if you have a friend who is discriminated because of his skin color, it's not an easy topic for you. It's not volatile, it's actually real. So yeah, I would say on a personal level, what we can do for the world is to explore our fears and dissipate them if they're not real. And if they're real, let's work on them to make this world better. Good.